The Battle of Manzikert in 1071 resulted in a heavy defeat of Rome by the Seljuks, opening the gates of Anatolia to Islam. When the Turks conquered almost all of Anatolia in a short period of time, European Christians were terrified. They gathered a large Crusader army in Europe and launched an all-out attack on Muslims. This attack was named the First Crusade. When the Anatolian Seljuks failed to stop these attacks, the Crusaders landed on the eastern Mediterranean coast and established states there. Realizing that Jerusalem remained weak during these attacks, the Shiite Fatimids attacked Jerusalem and took it away from the Seljuks. The Crusaders, who established states in the eastern Mediterranean, combined their forces and advanced to Jerusalem. The Fatimids, who didn't realize that the ultimate goal of the Crusaders was Jerusalem, could not take enough measures to protect it. Eventually, after 8 days of defense, the Fatimids surrendered Jerusalem to the Crusaders. On Friday, July the 15th, 1099, the Crusaders who captured Jerusalem attacked the courtyard of Al-Aqsa Mosque and committed a terrible massacre of Muslims there. In his victory letter to the Pope, Raymond, the commander of the Crusader army, made the following memorable statements. If you ask our enemies what has been done in Jerusalem, I want you to know that our horses are knee-deep in a sea of Muslim blood. In his book The Story of Civilization, investigative writer Will Durant reports the following. Muslim women were killed with spears and swords, babies were wrenched from their mothers' arms and pushed over the ramparts or their heads smashed on poles. Researcher author Jersey said, "There is no doubt that this is a black mark on the history of the Crusades. Anyone who reads about these events will have goosebumps on his or her body and be disgusted by what was done." Arif al-Arif, a Palestinian researcher and writer, states, "The Crusaders turned the Dome of the Rock into a church and erected a large cross on its dome. All of these events helped to root the spirit of revenge against the Christians in the region and the recapture of Jerusalem in the hearts of the Muslims." The ruler who made the most effort to conquer Jerusalem was of course Nureddin Zengi. However, he was not able to conquer Jerusalem. In 1174, Saladin Ayyubi, who recovered the country after his sudden death and his country was plunged into internal turmoil, took over the flag from his master Nureddin Zengi. It was time for Saladin to fight the Crusaders. Before we continue with the video, I would like to present a channel to you. How about learning about the greatest kingdoms, commanders and the biggest wars of history objectively on the Alternative History channel? Soon videos about these topics will be on this channel. You can find the channel link in the description. Saladin Ayyubi was constantly plotting to expel the Crusaders from the eastern Mediterranean. So much so that, according to the chroniclers of the period, whenever there was a conversation in an assembly, Saladin would somehow connect the subject to Jerusalem. The cross placed on the top of the Dome of the Rock and the voices of Muslim women and children who were massacred on Friday, July the 15th, 1099, haunted his dreams. In 1177, the Crusaders massacred Muslims around Ramla. Sultan Saladin then left Egypt to fight the Crusaders. When he came to the vicinity of Ramla, he disbanded his army and sent it to the surrounding villages and towns. There he captured some crusaders and took booty. But Baldwin IV, the 16-year-old leper king of Jerusalem, was after Saladin with his army. While Saladin and his army of about 26,000 men were tired and disorganized, the Crusader forces suddenly appeared and cut Saladin's army in two like a spear, and with a very fast maneuver, their long spear cavalry forces encircled Saladin's army in two separate circles. By nightfall, Saladin's army had suffered more than 20,000 casualties, and Saladin Ayyubi barely escaped with his life. One of Saladin's sons was also murdered in this battle. When this news was heard, the people were terrified. Rumors that Saladin Ayyubi had been killed echoed throughout Egypt. When Saladin finally returned to Egypt with his personal guard, he was greeted with great joy and celebrations. 2 years had passed, and Saladin had built new armies and devised new strategies against the Crusaders. Since Egypt was an agricultural rich country, the Ayyubid state quickly became an economically powerful state. In the same year, the Battle of Merj-Uyun was fought between the Crusaders and Saladin Ayyubi. While the Crusaders were advancing along the coastline, they looked down the hill and saw Saladin's camp. Thinking that the sudden raid would be appropriate, they attacked from the hill. Since the Ayyubid army was cautious against sudden raids, it quickly took a battle stance and moved on the enemy. The winner of this battle was Saladin Ayyubi. Saladin was advancing without rest, and day by day he was capturing villages and towns from the Crusaders. Among them was the Ahsan castle, where the tomb of the Prophet Yaqub a.s. was located. The Crusaders could no longer withstand the endless Muslim attacks. The King of Jerusalem and Saladin Ayyubi signed a peace treaty in 1182. According to this agreement, the security of life and property of Christians would be ensured in return for the security of life and property of Muslims. During the peace process, Saladin Ayyubi attacked the Armenian country and conquered many castles. When Nur-ad-Din Zengi's son Ismail Zengi died in his 20s due to poisoning, Saladin Ayyubi took the city of Aleppo from the Zengis. This period of peace between Muslims and Crusaders lasted for 3 years. When the leper king Baldwin IV of Jerusalem died in 1185, the king who succeeded him announced that he was breaking this peace agreement with the Muslims. He allowed the burning of Muslim caravans and villages. Crusaders attacked a Muslim caravan returning from pilgrimage and slaughtered Muslim pilgrims. The Prince of Kerak robbed these caravans and beheaded the Muslims, laughing and saying, "Where is your Muhammad? Call him to come to your aid." Thus, the peace treaty between Muslims and Christians was broken, and the actions of the Prince of Kerak were the last straw for Saladin Ayyubi. Saladin swore by saying, "I will kill the Prince of Kerak with my own hands." After that, he sent news to all Islamic states and announced that he was preparing for the conquest of Jerusalem. Volunteer Muslims from Egypt, Syria, the Abbasids, Turks and all Muslim countries started to join Saladin's army to be in the army that conquered Jerusalem. When this news reached the Crusaders, they first thought of defending Jerusalem against the Muslims. But the new king wanted to prove himself. Therefore, he decided to confront Saladin Ayyubi with his army, instead of making a cowardly defense in the city. Finally, the Crusader armies gathered and marched against the Islamic army. Saladin used a cunning tactic. He attacked the fortress of Tabariya and captured it within a day. Thus, he forced the Crusader army to fight on a battlefield of his choice, on a plain near Tabariya. Saladin had the Jordan River, which flows out of Lake Tabariya, at his back and waited for the army of Jerusalem in front of the village of Hattin. The Crusader army numbered 50,000 according to one account and 63,000 according to another. They could not find any water source until they reached Hattin. The weather was very hot and scorching. They had to break through Saladin's army to reach water. The Crusaders, who had spent the night without water, quickly attacked Saladin's army to reach water. But the Muslims drove them back. On the second day, the Crusaders were even thirstier and attacked again to reach water, but they were repulsed again. Finally, when the Crusaders were weakened by fatigue and thirst, Saladin ordered a mass attack. The Muslims drove the exhausted Crusaders into a circle. More than 30,000 Crusaders were killed, and more than 30,000 captives were taken. Among the captives were all the counts except the Count of Trebizond, including the King of Jerusalem. The Prince of Kerak, who had insulted our Prophet, was also among the captives. The captives were chained and lined up in front of Saladin. Saladin, fulfilling his promise, summoned the Prince of Kerak to his tent. He told him to convert to Islam. When he refused, he severed his head with a sudden sword blow and said, "Yes, I am the deputy of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to avenge his ummah." He showed his severed head to the counts and said, "This man has been punished for cursing the Messenger of Allah." Then he ordered all knights of the temple and the Hospitallers to be killed. He ordered the rest of the prisoners to be taken to Damascus in chains. Saladin Ayyubi visited the grave of the Prophet Shu'aib in Hattin and prayed. Within 3 months after this victory, Acre, Nablus, Jaffa, Tabnin, Beirut and Ashkelon were captured by the Ayyubids. The Crusaders no longer had a proper army to defend Jerusalem. When Muslims heard that Sultan Saladin had defeated the Crusaders at Hattin and was on his way to the conquest of Jerusalem, they rushed to Saladin's army from everywhere to take part in these conquests. Finally, Saladin's army arrived in front of Jerusalem and the siege began. Eyes were looking at the crosses on the walls. There was a big cross on top of the dome of the rock. This galvanized the Muslims even more. Catapults began to beat the walls of Jerusalem. When the Sultan was informed that the northeastern walls were weaker, he directed the catapults there. Finally, the northeastern wall collapsed as a result of intense catapult fire. The Crusaders came out of the collapsed wall to attempt a breach, but the Muslims encircled them and trapped them there. According to Ibn Kathir, the Crusaders finally wanted to surrender and asked for Sultan Saladin's assurance. However, the Sultan didn't accept their plea and said, "Just as you took Jerusalem by force before, I will conquer it now. Just as you killed the Muslims in Jerusalem before, I will not leave a Christian in Jerusalem that we have not killed." Then they said, "If you do not accept our surrender, we will go back. We will kill all the Muslim captives we have." There were about 4,000 Muslim captives in Jerusalem in the hands of the Crusaders. "We will kill our children and women. We destroy our homes and beautiful places. We will burn our belongings. We will destroy our possessions. We will destroy the dome of the rock and burn everything we can get our hands on." Then we will go out and fight you fiercely and throw ourselves to our deaths. After that, there is no good for us to live anymore. Not one of us will give his life without killing a few of our enemies. What good can we hope for after this? After listening to these words, Sultan Saladin declared his consent to peace. He gave up his own opinion. He only put forward the following conditions. Men will be ransomed with 10 dinars, women with 5 dinars each, and small children with 2 dinars each. Those who cannot pay these will become captives of the Muslims. In addition, crops, products, weapons and houses will belong to the Muslims. The Crusaders will be allowed to move to a place where they will find safety, namely the city of Tyre. Thus, the peace treaty was signed. Those who could not pay these ransoms would be given 40 days. Those who could not pay the ransom within this period would be captured. The number of captives under this condition was 60,000, including men, women and children. The Sultan and the Muslims entered the city before the Friday prayer time. On the first Friday they entered the city, they took out the crosses, priests and pigs from Al-Aqsa Mosque and cleaned it. The Knights Templar had made rooms for themselves on the west side of the Great Altar. They had also taken the mihrab as a storehouse for themselves. All these places were cleaned and restored to the way they were during the Islamic period. The Dome of the Rock was washed with clean water, then rose water and musk was sprinkled on it. The cross was taken down from its dome. The crescent moon was put in its place. The pulpit that Sultan Nureddin Zengi had built for Jerusalem was brought. Nureddin Zengi had hoped to conquer Jerusalem himself, but it was conquered after his death by one of his followers, Sultan Saladin. The pulpit was set up next to the mihrab. Carpets were laid, candles were hung, prayer rugs were laid out. Many prostrations were made, various kinds of worship were performed. Prayers and supplications ascended to the sky, blessings came down, troubles went away. Prayers were offered. Muezzins called out the adhan, the monks fell silent. Misery was gone. In places where it was said that Allah is the third of three, it was said that Allah is one. Happiness came, the jinx was gone. Worship was offered to Allah, who is unborn, one, unique, without equal, to whom everything is dependent, but who himself is dependent on nothing. Truth came, falsehood went.